Hello and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, Break Free from Micro Focus Dialog System Constraints. Before I introduce our presenters for today, I just want to go over a few brief housekeeping notes. First of all, if you have any questions or any technical difficulties at any time during this presentation, please use the chat panel located on the lower right-hand side of your screen to send those in. In regards to questions, to make sure our presenters get through the entire presentation with our time allotted today, we will hold all questions until the end. But please, at any time, if you have a question, send those right in using the chat panel. Today, I'm very excited to introduce our two presenters. First, we have Walter Sweat, who is the Principal Technical Architect from GT Software. He brings 40 years of experience in working on mainframe applications, as well as on mainframe migration and modernization products. Before joining GT Software, he worked for Home Depot, Napa Auto Parts, Ashland Chemical, and Dell. Today, he focuses on helping companies explore mainframe migration and modernization options to move to a more agile, cost-effective platform. Also joining Walter today is Bob Wolfe. Bob is the president of Flexus. Along with his partner, Andy Holyoke, they founded Flexus in 1986. And since the 80s, Flexus has introduced numerous products to the COBOL programming market, including graphical interface tools, Windows printing tools, client-server application deployment tools, and web browser user interface tools. One of Flexus's latest innovations, Refocus, enables the creation of an automated source analysis and conversion system to automatically convert old COBOL source code into modern COBOL source code. At this time, I'm pleased to welcome our first presenter, Walter Sweat. Take it away, Walter.
Randy, thank you very much. I appreciate it, as always. And hello, everyone. Thanks for being here today. I'd like to take just a minute to talk about the agenda, what we're going to try to go over. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about why we want to talk about alternatives to the Micro Focus Dialog System. I want to introduce you to our companies, and then Bob's going to help us discuss the different migration solution options that exist out there for existing Micro Focus Dialog customers. And then we're going to talk specifically about the Refocus platform that Flexus and GT Software offer together. And as Brandy mentioned, we're going to end up with questions, so please don't hesitate to ask us any as you go along. We want this to be as interactive as possible and as informative for you as possible. So the real question is, why do we care about dialog system alternatives? Dialog system has been around, as all of you know, for years and years and years. Gosh, I first started working with it back in the mid-'80s, I think it was, and it's been a very, very solid, good platform. But one of the things that I experienced, and I'm thinking that perhaps many of you have experienced as well, is that dialog system, as strong as it is, sometimes can actually lock you in, so it's harder to modernize your applications and to open them up to different technologies. What we're hoping to talk about is a solution, a migration path that helps you unlock your future. And probably more important than anything else, we think it can save you significant amounts of money. And so that's going to be the focus of this presentation today. Let's talk a little bit about who we are, because I know all of you may not be familiar with either GT Software or Flexus. So I'll just kind of start out. GT Software, an Atlanta-based company, has been around for about 35 years. We have focused historically on the mainframe market space. But at the same time, we are also the worldwide distributor for Fujitsu's NetCOBOL product outside of Japan. And for those of you who really aren't familiar with NetCOBOL, NetCOBOL actually has its origins in the old Amdahl mainframe COBOL market space. Fujitsu and Amdahl became one company many years ago, and Fujitsu took over the responsibility and support for this mainframe-like COBOL environment. But the beauty is, it's not just related to the mainframe. You know, many years ago, and I would hope that you would say the same, there were lots and lots and lots of options in terms of looking at COBOL alternatives. But in today's market, really there aren't that many, and Fujitsu NetCOBOL is one of the leading COBOL suppliers left. Micro Focus with their dialogue system, of course, is a very robust, good platform. But we think that NetCOBOL offers many alternatives that, thousands of customers have found benefit in. So we are, as I mentioned, the worldwide distributor for NetCOBOL. We also offer the worldwide first level support for NetCOBOL. And we've been doing this in essence since the mid-90s. So we have a strong background in working with this environment. The other things that are important to know about GT Software, I think, and I hope you'll find them of interest, is that we really are focused on providing solutions for both data and applications. A point in case. We have a product called NeoData, for instance, that allows people who are using COBOL off of the mainframe to be able to take that vSAM data and move it to Microsoft SQL Server. That is just one of the ways that we've extended our environment and provide solutions for data and applications. And of course, as Randy had mentioned earlier, we provide solutions for mainframe modernization, and that's been my experience area that I've worked in the most. But we do focus on COBOL in general as well. And that's why we're really excited to partner with Flexus. And we've got a long-standing relationship working with a really cool team of guys who do a wonderful job in providing solutions for the COBOL space. And with that, Bob, if I could, I'm going to ask you to talk about Flexus and kind of give Flexus's background in the space as well.
Okay. Thank you, Walter. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So who is Flexus and what do we do? Well, Flexus basically has been providing COBOL tools for COBOL programmers since 1986. We've been doing this for 30 years. And we originally started out as a vendor of user interface tools and other associated tools. But then more recently, a few years ago, we started developing migration services using automated migration tools that we developed in-house. And so we now provide not only the COBOL tools, we continue to sell and support the tools that we developed since day one, but we also provide automated services for converting your COBOL source code into a more modern style of COBOL program. We support multiple environments. We support the Windows environment. We support Unix and Linux environments, both in character mode and then also using Unix and Linux servers and Windows clients for a client-server type of architecture. We also support OpenVMS as well, but that would be for the Hewlett-Packard OpenVMS compiler, so that it's not specific to the Fujitsu NetCOBOL product. We also were first to market for many of our solutions. That includes the graphical user interface tool. I think our first attempt to get into the graphical world was back in the it was late 80s, early 90s, when we were working with the very, very first versions of Windows, Windows 286 and 386. We never really released anything commercially for those environments, but we provided graphical user interface tools for COBOL on the Microsoft Windows 3.0 and 3.1 platforms. So we've been doing this for a long time. We understand the graphical user interface world very well, and so we want to help you modernize your COBOL programs or migrate them to a different modern environment.
Okay. Great, Bob. Thanks. It's funny you think about it. We talk about COBOL running back in the 286, 386 days. COBOL, of course, has been around forever. One of the things that I've always found exciting is that the consistency of COBOL as a platform and the modernization capabilities that have been added in, the things that y'all at Flexus have done, really allows COBOL to be that beacon, that environment that works as it did before and as we need to work in the future. So that's why these kinds of things, to me, are really, really exciting. Bob, could I ask you to kind of talk about what the different migration solutions are, the types of conversions that you can go through?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Flexus offers a number of different migration solutions for Micro Focus COBOL programmers, and today we're going to primarily focus on the dialog system platform, and that we're going to also focus more specifically on the dialog system to C# and Winforms programming interface conversion solution. But I wanted to touch upon the fact that we don't just support dialog system to C# and Winforms. We support a number of different target environments, both COBOL-oriented programming interface and non-COBOL programming-oriented interface. For dialog system, we can convert your application to the C# and Winforms target environment. And that can be a managed code environment as well, but some programmers aren't necessarily comfortable moving into a C# environment, and they would prefer to continue to write their user interface control code using ANSI standard COBOL. And so therefore the second target environment that we're not going to go into detail on, but we're more than happy to provide additional information if you need it, is the fact that we can take your dialog system application and we can convert it to an interface that uses a call using programming interface, ANSI standard COBOL. The user interface is controlled by our COBOL SP2 graphical user interface design and development system. And so we're really giving customers choices here. We know not everyone wants to use COBOL for their modernization, and we also know that not everyone wants to use C# for their COBOL application modernization, and that's why we offer multiple environments for the target.
Bob, that makes perfect sense to me. I can see where there are companies who don't want any proprietary involvement at all. They want to have something that's completely open, and for those customers, using C# and Winforms fits into a model that may match other development environments they're doing. But for those folks who want to do just COBOL, you've had a solution for that that works great for them as well. So that flexibility sure seems important to me.
That was exactly what our thinking was. We also offer other target environment, or I'm sorry, other source environment conversion solutions as well. If you have some older COBOL programs that utilize display except syntax for displaying user interface screens, we can convert those to the call using target environment, which uses our COBOL SP2 graphical user interface tool. If you have screen section user interface programs, we can convert those, and we also, for the Accu COBOL community, we can convert your Accu COBOL, Accu GT GUI syntax to the COBOL call using interface so that you can move to a Fujitsu net COBOL environment as well. In order to accomplish this, and we're going to focus more on the C# Winforms target now. In order to accomplish the conversion process, what we do is we ask the customer to provide us with export files from Dialog System. Dialog System allows you to export your Dialog System screen sets into an ASCII text export file. And when you do that, you would simply send those to us, and you'd send those to us in to a secure FTP server under a non-disclosure agreement, of course. And we take the screen set export file and we convert those to Winforms definitions. And then we take the dialog code, which is the event-driven dialog code within Dialog System that drives the screens, the individual screen sets, and we convert that dialog code to C#, so that now you have a C# / Winforms environment in order to control the user interface screens. The application is absolutely .NET based, and so you can move into that environment. We also generate a small COBOL program that essentially drives the dialog code converted to C#, and so it allows you to drive that dialog code. That COBOL program is a managed code program as well, and that can communicate with your any back-end COBOL programs that you may happen to have. And so you do need to use the Fujitsu COBOL for net COBOL for .NET, and it will be working in a .NET managed code environment. You need to also, if you have the Fujitsu net COBOL compiler now, we would want to know whether you're going to be using a 64-bit or a 32-bit version of the net COBOL for .NET compiler. If there are any other COBOL programs that are running in the back and at the back end of your application of your system, then basically those don't have to be changed at all. There's no need to change those because they're going to operate as they have normally operated. I mentioned earlier that we require the use of net COBOL for .NET because of the managed code nature of the conversion.
Bob, real quick, I'd like to just interject something here if I could. Talking about net COBOL for .NET, one of the things that we've seen over the years is that, people start to use different platforms for development, and I'm a huge fan of net COBOL for .NET and .NET in general. Being able to integrate solutions into a more modern, I'll use that phrase, more modern environment where there's more flexibility like .NET, where you can use the .NET framework and data classes and Winforms for displays for that graphical interface. There is just so much flexibility there. So I view this as a real plus as opposed to using a net COBOL for Windows environment where you have to work with older APIs. This flexibility that your solution provides is something that is really, really important and helpful for customers and companies as they move forward, I think. So congratulations on that. I think it's a great solution.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, allowing the customer to work in that Visual Studio environment and maintain the C# and Winforms in that environment also, I think, is a plus in that regard.
Absolutely.
The process that we utilize, the refocus tool is highly automated, and we continually enhance it as we come across language extensions that are utilized in your programs that may not be supported. There are so many language extensions. We support them on a phased-in approach, and we support the vast majority of the commonly used language extensions, but occasionally we'll come across one that's maybe a bit more obscure, and we'll add that to the refocus product, the refocus conversion tool. And it is highly automated, and because it's highly automated, that helps us offer the services at a very low cost. The cost is based upon our proof of concept. What we do is we try to do a proof of concept up front so that we can take a look at the code, analyze it, and determine the cost. So all the conversions are offered at a low cost. Some that are even more highly automated, standardized COBOL programs can be discounted in that regard. The objective is to help reduce overall development costs. It allows you to migrate to compilers that are less expensive on acquisition and maintenance. In addition, we can help you reduce deployment costs because Fujitsu Net COBOL does not charge runtime fees, nor do we. And so there are no expensive runtime fees for you to concern yourself with. We also support multiple platforms. If you decide that you want to, you're running on a Windows platform and you want to move to, say, a Linux or Unix server, then that's certainly possible to do. with our various solutions. And so we're giving you that flexibility of being able to move not only from to a different server platform, but if your application uses character mode dialog system, we can convert that as well. Or if you happen to have display accept or screen section character mode programs, we can convert those character mode environments to graphical user interface environments. Now, one thing to mention about that character mode to GUI is that we don't necessarily have the ability to magically make your character mode screens look like a rich GUI screen, because we're doing the conversion on a one-for-one basis. We're taking the character mode screens and pretty much converting them to GUI, but leaving the user interface components intact. But the benefit is that we help you migrate to the new environment. We help you migrate to the GUI environment, where then you can enhance them either immediately or later on in a phased-in approach and add additional GUI controls to your application on an as-needed basis. And those some of the other solutions that we offer, we can help you migrate your application to a web browser user interface screen. We can also help you migrate your application to a client-server architecture for using our thin client software and our COBOL-based solution. And we can, as I mentioned earlier, we can help you migrate to from a character mode application to a GUI or graphical user interface based user interface for your application. So we try to provide you with portability across different operating systems, different user interface environments, and we've been doing that. We've been supporting that for many years. So again, this is something that we're very experienced at, and we should be able to help you with any pitfalls that may come up. And I think that just about ends my my involvement at this point, right?
Okay, yeah. Bob, on the first slide, we put up why is it important for companies to consider alternatives for dialogue solutions, and I think you nailed it with these last couple of slides. Monetarily, there's huge savings in the fact that COBOL doesn't charge runtimes, nor do you charge runtimes. So this migration path, the technical solutions that y'all have put together and that you provide, that help automate that in such a robust manner, along with the cost savings, to me, just makes sense for people to look at this as an alternative. And I hope that people will agree with that. What I'd like to do now, if you're okay with it, is to kind of talk more from a technical perspective as to what this looks like and how it might work. And you kind of led into that earlier when you described the process. What this refocus method does is take, as you said, the dialog field definitions and the dialog code, and you use the standard Micro Focus dialog capabilities of exporting that to an export file, just a purely text file that then is fed into the Flexus refocus engine, and what we get out are a Visual Studio WinForm object and C# application code. So then moving forward, we have the ability to work in this modern, dynamic, very flexible and capable development environment, Visual Studio, using newer technologies. The benefit, though, and this is something that's always important to me, is that the look and feel is basically going to be the same. Bob, as you know, we have a product for mainframe migrations called NeoKix, where we take people who have old mainframe BMS screens and we convert them to a Visual Studio ASPX environment. One of the goals that we always have, and something that you're able to offer the Micro Focus Dialog customers, is that on day one, that look and feel can be the same. if a company who's been using Dialog System has 100 users who've been doing data entry on screens for 20 years that look exactly the same, you don't want necessarily on day one after a migration for that look and feel to change. So having something in a new environment that looks and feels like what the old environment was is a plus. And then an even bigger plus, the fact that this is now a WinForm type environment, you can extend that environment going forward. That's what we do with NeoKicks. That's why I think this is such a great partnership, because y'all have followed the same path, and we'll see the same benefits for our customers in that as well. So that look and feel being the same is important. And I just kind of want to talk about, from a perspective of the panel definitions in the code, I wanted people to kind of see what that looks like. So if we look at an original Micro Focus Dialog panel definition, something that everybody who's attending today is well familiar with, where we're defining a panel and naming it and describing what it physically looks like and describing how it's constructed, after the fact, that is converted via the refocus tool to a WinForm definition. And this may look a little scary to people on the front end. The good news to me is that once you get used to it, it's really not that scary. And the reason for that is it's going to follow the same pattern over and over and over again. No matter what panels you have, you're still going to have definitions that are going to talk about what the name property is of that. That cust ID becomes customer underscore ID. So it's just transferring this to a new syntax. We're specifying a size element. We're defining what a border style is. We're using an object, a system Windows Forms text box. And those are things that are standard as part of Winforms. So if you have 100 panel definitions, they're all going to follow this same pattern. So once you get the pattern, it's really very easy to follow. And one of the things that I've discovered personally, and as you know, Bob, I'm older than dirt and been doing COBOL forever, and have used a lot of COBOL over the years. For me, this .NET methodology just makes it so much easier to do these things. You're just talking about properties of things, so you're filling in the blanks as you're writing code. These little dot indicators say that I want to take this customer ID and some of the methods that exist for that, like what the location is and what the name is. As I type this code in, those options are provided to me. I don't need to know all of these things. The development environment helps me build it. And of course, what y'all do with Refocus is to build this automatically. So a customer doesn't even have to type this in, but as they want to start to modify it and enhance it, they have that capability. And it's really an easy environment to work in. Sort of the same thing for the dialog code. Before, we were looking at the definition of what a screen looked like, a Windows form looked like. Now let's look at what the actual dialog code looks like. And again, hopefully this is something that everybody is familiar with. We're defining a function key, and we're moving an element and a panel name somewhere, and we're defining that function key usage, and we're defining that there's a trailer. The generated C# code that comes out of that, again, it may look a little scary at first, but in truth, it's pretty logical. Even without knowing C#, someone who doesn't know C# can kind of get a feel for what this really means. For instance, down here, I'll start at the bottom. We're going to set the data method for the trailer object. We're going to show the trailer. Up here, if the next procedure is not equal to null, we're going to return, as we would over here. The format of this environment is very consistent, and that's the real key for all of this. Being able to have code that is consistent and extensible allows people to have the flexibility to enhance their applications in ways that in today's world may be very, very difficult for them to do. So while this may look a little odd to start with, it's really easy to get used to. Lord knows if anybody can start working with C# code after being a COBOL programmer for 40 years, and I can do it, anybody else can. And Bob, one of the things that you mentioned that I think is really important, if this isn't right for someone, if someone doesn't have the goal or the requirement or the need to say, I don't want any proprietary solution at all. Instead, I want to have something that looks like COBOL that I'm used to, where it's just a call statement. You provide that as well. So hopefully that's the best of both worlds for everybody. So again, real quick, the thing that's important is what you were working with before, your users will still be used to working with in the future, but you can then start to extend that look and feel, to modernize that look and feel, and give your users new capabilities that it's much harder to do in this older environment. And maybe even more important, the financial benefits of moving to this new environment, where if you add 50 new users, there is no additional cost for using this panel in that new environment. That WinForm in that new environment is a huge plus for people. And to me, this is something that's just really, really important. I mentioned that I've been doing Visual Studio for quite a few years. It is without a doubt the best and most enjoyable development environment that I've ever worked in. It just becomes super easy to work in this environment. A lot of it is fill in the blanks. Here, this is C# code. If you're working with your COBOL applications, you would still be working with them in this Visual Studio environment if you wanted to. So you have the ability to have a consistent development environment that is based upon the billions of dollars that Microsoft has invested in coming up with, in my humble opinion, the premier development environment that exists out there today. So that kind of brings us to the end of the presentation today. I would like to say, if there are any questions after we go through questions today, if you think of anything else, please don't hesitate to contact us at the phone number that is shown there, or at info@gtsoftware.com, or at netcobol.com. Bob and I are both happy, excited to answer any questions that come up. And I'd also like to offer, if you have an interest, you think that there might be benefit in looking at alternatives to the environment that you work in today, we offer a free assessment that can help you get a better feel for what might be involved, what might the cost be, what might be the level of effort in looking at a migration, and we would love to help you with that. And again, if you have any interest in that, you can reach us at info@gtsoftware.com. Brandy, I think that kind of has covered everything that we had wanted to cover today. I'm going to ask you if we had any questions come in.
Hi, Walter and Bob. Yes, thank you both for a great presentation today. And we actually do have several questions, so let's just go ahead and get started with those. Question number 1, is there a solution for ACU too? I assume that means AccuCOBOL?
I would think that would mean AccuCOBOL, yes.
I can address that. Yes, we have actually several solutions for AccuCOBOL. If your AccuCOBOL application uses display accept code, then we can convert that using the call using solution, the SP2 solution, as it were. If your AccuCOBOL program uses screen section, we can convert that as well. And if your AccuCOBOL program uses the AccuGT graphical user interface code, we have a solution to convert that over so that you can use the SP2 user interface tool, which is the call using tool, along with Fujitsu NetCOBOL. So we do have solutions for that.
Bob, I'd like to add one thing on that,
sure,
if I could, as well. Fujitsu NetCOBOL, starting with version 7, the Fujitsu development team has added in an extensive list of AccuCOBOL intrinsics, things that have been unique to AccuCOBOL over the years that now can be built in and be part of NetCOBOL. And that's a huge benefit for companies who are looking to move, not just based on the look and feel, but also of some of the logic capabilities that exist in the product as well. So joined together, we think we have a very strong solution for existing Accu customers who are looking for alternatives.
Okay, great. So our next question appears to be about Visual Studio. let's see, inside Visual Studio, where is the Winforms code maintained?
So inside of Visual Studio, whether you're developing a WinForm application in C# or VB.NET or with NetCobol, the storage is the same. There's a text file that exists that contains the definition of what that file looks like, what the panel or screen looks like. And one of the beauties of working within Visual Studio is that it is an integrated environment, so you have a separation of the code from the display area. They don't have to be together. So it is stored individually inside of the Visual Studio solution and NetCobol and C# projects.
Okay, and the next question is, where is it maintained? Something about the Forms Designer, maybe?
For the Forms Designer, you can use the Forms Designer to define what that looks like. The code that I was showing before defines the definition of what that screen might look like, and you have the ability to use Forms Designer to alter that screen definition as you move forward if you want to. As I mentioned, the same with C# or VB.NET, it will be the same here.
Okay, great. All right, here's another question. This one is about NetCobol. Will NetCobol run as efficiently as Micro Focus with Dialog System?
Great question indeed. One of the things that has always been important to me, having worked for a lot of COBOL companies over the years, is that NetCobol is focused on performance. That has always been one of the mantras for its existence. As opposed to some of the other COBOL providers over the years who've developed the philosophy of compile once, run anywhere, which is the old Java philosophy, where perhaps they've had to make decisions that would have a negative impact on performance, where they have to say something, we have to write code that will work in any environment. NetCobol has followed a different philosophy. There is a different code for NetCobol for .NET and NetCobol for Windows and NetCobol for Linux. Each code set designed to ensure optimum performance. So yes, we absolutely think that people will be very pleased with the performance of a migrated application using NetCobol for .NET.
Great. Our next question, are there any limits on the number of users who can use these migrated screens?
None from our end.
Yeah, and none from the NetCobol perspective either. So one of the things that Bob mentioned earlier, and I mentioned as well, and why that is such an intriguing question, I'm glad that it was asked, is that from a user perspective, there are no runtime fees, either for the use of NetCobol or for the use of the Flexus migrated application. If you have 2 customers or if you have 10,000 customers, when you are running the application, the cost is the same. And that is certainly not always the case with some of the other COBOL providers in the market space today.
Okay, well, thank you both very much. That looks like that concludes all of the questions from our audience today. Once again, on behalf of myself, Walter, and Bob, I would like to thank you all for joining us today. And once again, if you have any questions or want to learn more, feel free to contact us at 800-765-4348 or by emailing info@gtsoftware.com. Thank you to Walter and Bob, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye now.